Hey guys, it's me, Lonnie Clark, Nuts for Art again. I want to thank you for tuning into my channel and for being my subscribers. I actually really appreciate it. I know it's been a while, but I got something that I really want to share with you. This is the Citizens Radiation Data Map of Japan. It's the digest edition, and I have been given permission to read it. And it comes from the collective database of citizens radioactive measuring labs. And I'm going to show you the back because you can actually order this on your own. It's the Citizens Radiation Data Map of Japan Data Digest, and you can go to a website. I heard about it on Levi Halevi's show, but I'm pretty sure that this address in the back is the correct one. This gentleman, Tony, you can go online and buy this for $10 yourself. Please visit us at, here, I'm going to show you. Boop. Please visit us. And this is the information. I'll have a link also. I'll go in and put a link in. But Tony Sahara sent me this out of support. I heard about this on Levi Halevi's show. And she did a show where she used this data radiation map as the title of it. So I wrote these people. I didn't know who I was writing, but I found their email address and asked if I could read this on my channel here, Nuts for Art. And the guy, Tony, said that he was a listener of mine on UCY TV, and that for sure I could read this. So check this out. Now keep in mind, this data map, when you look at it, actually was done in 2011. This is cesium-137. But, you know, it's still there. In fact, it's probably even worse because cesium's half-life is 27 and a half years. So I thought what I'd do is read. I'm just going to read. I'm going to read this whole thing to you guys. You know, I've read several books. I haven't read anything to you in a long time. But I have kind of decided that I am going to read this. You know why? I think just for posterity's sake. Because we're in the middle of a big, gigantic nuclear contamination experiment. And they have no idea what's really going to happen to humanity. All the science says that it's going to kill us. And all their denial says it really won't matter. So the table of contents on pages 2 and 3 says, why measure in becquerels? Pages 4 and 5 says, what is East Japan Soil Becquerel Measurement Project? Page 6 and 7, 2011 radioactivity map of 17 prefectures in eastern Japan. Page 8, 2020 cesium contamination map. Page 9, 2010 radioactivity level before the Fukushima accident. That is super fascinating. Pages 10 and 11, estimate of radioactive cesium contamination over 100 years. Page 12, what is Mina no data site, or the Mina no or Mina no, MINNA-NO. Page 13, Mina no data site measurement accuracy control. Page 14-15, Mina no data site participating measurement laboratories. And page 16, glossary credits and acknowledgments. And that was the last page that I showed you. So I'm just going to get right into this. I think I'm going to keep these videos at 15 minutes, maybe 20, depending on where the reading goes. Mostly because I think it's super boring to listen for more than that. So, first subtitle. About Citizens Radiation Data Map of Japan, Digest Edition. This booklet shows the actual amount of radioactive contamination caused by the March 2011 Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant accident, as revealed by Japanese citizen scientists. In the aftermath of the accident, citizens around Japan began to question the Japanese government's initial radiation exposure assessment, the scope of their radioactivity measuring, and their method of information disclosure. With the aim of reducing citizen exposure to radiation, we established Mina no Data Site, an independent, nonprofit network of radioactivity measuring laboratories, to conduct extensive food measurements and release this information to the public. More specifically, over a 3-year period, starting from October 2014, we measured the concentration of radioactivity, cesium-134 and cesium-137, in the soil in becquerels per kilogram as part of the East Japan Soil Becquerel Measurement Project, and publicized the results online as a collection of maps. According to legislation enacted 5 years after the Chernobyl accident, Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus were responsible for measuring both air dosage, sieverts, units of sieverts per hour, and soil concentrations, becquerel per meter squared. Using these measurements, the authorities were required to establish criteria for relocation and compensation. The Chernobyl legislation guarantees relocation and recuperation rights to residents from areas where the exposure dose was estimated to be above 1 millisievert per year. And I'm going to show you this because if I'm reading this wrong, I want you guys to correct me. But you see here, boop, I kind of got this backwards. See where it shows where my finger is, 1 millisievert per year right there. So I think that's how we say that. But as all of you know, I'm not the scientist type. In contrast, after the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant accident, soil measurements were more or less not conducted outside of Fukushima Prefecture, and the government has only published estimated numbers of the deposition amounts of radioactive cesium and the air dose rate 1 meter above the ground. The soil concentration figures released by the government are nothing more than estimates, and because the method of display is just an approximation, it is impossible to correctly ascertain the actual amount of contamination in areas where citizens actually live. In order to address this unsatisfactory state of affairs, we solicited the cooperation of citizens from around the country to help us carry out this soil measurement project in an attempt to fully grasp the total amount of radioactive fallout which fell on eastern Japan, excluding Hokkaido, as a result of the triple meltdown at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. As a result of this investigation, we determined that the radioactive contamination was by no means limited to Fukushima Prefecture, and that 100 years from now, there will be several highly contaminated areas where humans should not live. And you know what? Like in Japan, there's barely any places where they're not allowing people to live. Now, 8 years after the accident, not only has the government yet to establish a criteria for radioactive concentration in the soil, but the authorities are continuing to enforce a policy of compelling people to return to their homes if the air dose rate goes below 20 millisieverts per year. Seen from the standpoint of international standards of public health and radiological protection, we cannot turn a blind eye to this unacceptable situation. With the Summer Olympics and Paralympics scheduled to be held in Tokyo in 2020, we decided to publish this booklet in order to respond to questions and concerns from people around the world about the current state of radiation contamination in Japan. This booklet is a digest version of our best-selling Japanese book, Illustration, 17 Prefecture Radioactivity Map and Close Analysis, which was self-published in November 2018 and was awarded the Japan Congress of Journalists Prize in July 2019. So I'm going to show you, it's in italics, and I think you can see it here, right? So that's the title, Illustration, so you guys can see it, Illustration, I forget the name of it, 17 Prefecture Radioactivity Map and Close Analysis. And I don't know if we can get that book outside of Japan, but it might be worth a look. With the publication of this English booklet, we are hoping to inform people around the world about the actual amount of contamination in Japan, and at the same time, we are calling on the Japanese government to correct the following two problems. Yeah, like that's going to happen. Sorry. It's not going to happen. Let's get that chair closer. Okay, so this is one thing they want to have corrected. Correction of the double standard concerning radioactive materials, 100 becquerels per kilogram and 8,000 becquerels per kilogram. With regards to the clearance rule for radioactive materials, prior to the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant accident, if the level of radioactivity was more than 100 becquerels per kilogram, there was a strict storage obligation. However, with regards to radioactive contaminants derived from the Fukushima accident, the government is permitting anything less than 8,000 becquerels per kilogram to be incinerated or disposed of as ordinary waste. An irresponsible policy which leads to the unnecessary spread of radioactive materials. I would say it's not irresponsible. I would say it is a crime against humanity. That is a criminal policy. 8,000 becquerels to be incinerated or disposed of as ordinary waste. Who in their right minds would approve that? We are calling on the Japanese government to correct this double standard and are demanding a return to the pre-accident clearance levels of 100 becquerels per kilogram. But you know why they can't? Because they'd have to evacuate the whole freaking island probably. Also, with regards to soil contamination, we are asking the government not to rely simply on the air radiation dose in sieverts, as they have been doing up until now. Instead, we are calling on them to guarantee appropriate rights of evacuation and compensation that meet international standards based on zone classification, depending on the soil concentration of radioactive material. That makes me cry. That is incomprehensible that the people of Japan are not like out with their pitchforks and just throwing these people in frickin' jail and down the river and out in the ocean. Number 2, this is the second thing they want to have corrected. Restoring the annual public dose limit from 1 millisievert to the pre-accident level of 1 millisievert a year. So now the public dose limit is 20 millisieverts. Before the accident, it was 1. So they increased it exponentially 19 times. 20 times, I guess. The Japanese government has not yet canceled the nuclear power accident state of emergency declaration, which was enacted on March 11th, 2011. Wow, I didn't know that. Based on this declaration, the public dose limit was raised from 1 millisievert to 20 millisieverts per year. And the government is forcefully requiring evacuees to return to their homes in areas where the dose limit does not exceed 20 millisieverts per year. We are calling on the authorities to abolish the 20 millisievert standard repatriation policy and to return to the pre-accident public standard annual limit dose of 1 millisievert. That is incomprehensible, you guys. Let me put my glasses on. I can't see how long I've been reading. 15 minutes. Boom. Right on time. So I'm going to come back like I do when I read to you. I will be back tomorrow night and we'll start on the next pages. See, that is I read you the table of contents. So tomorrow we'll start here and I'll show you the pictures. I don't know about you, but I'm dumbfounded. 20 millisieverts. They're still under a state of emergency. 8,000 becquerels per kilogram is allowed to be incinerated or disposed of as ordinary waste. And people want to go to the 2020 Olympics. It's completely insane. Wow. So I'm going to keep reading this book and I'm going to keep talking about it. I know there's barely anybody talking about it. We're just like ho-hum, but we can't be because this is, as I said, an unproven scientific experiment on all of humanity, starting in Japan. I guess the white nationalists really hate the Japanese people and the Oriental people, the people from the Orient and from Asian, I guess. You know, it's incomprehensible. It's incomprehensible. It's just, for me, I'm like, my head is exploding when I read this. I actually hadn't read this before I read it to you guys, so this is the first time I'm digesting this. It's beyond stunning. I'm actually going to call, this is the thing. We can call our elected officials all we want. This is the lesson I've learned in the last 8 years. Call your elected officials. Knock yourself out, baby. They'll do whatever you want. Is it going to change the nuclear industry's grip on our governments? No. Is it going to change their behavior? No. I think what's going to change the behavior is when people start dropping off like flies. When the politicians' kids start dropping off like flies, their grandchildren. Or maybe it's going to take the 2020 Olympics where we see athletes having heart attacks and nosebleeds and bleeding from their ears and their teeth falling out. I don't know. It's a grim picture, folks. There's actually no happy, joy to any of this stuff. It's actually incomprehensibly inhumane and cruel. But I'm going to press on and I'm going to read this because the people of Japan have to live with it. You and I here in the States or in Europe or wherever you hear me from, we have the privilege of not having to live in Japan, not being forced to move back into a radioactive zone. Imagine that. It's incomprehensible. Well, you guys, put your courage feet on, and I really appreciate you listening to this 15, 18, 20 minutes, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow night. Ciao. Take care.